Narrator Gardner. A lie can be buried beneath an empire for 30 years. But never forget, a gardener hears the whispers of the soil. And that whisper was telling a tale of rot at the core of the Vance Corporation's greatest secret. The roots of that secret ran deeper than any grave. This is Elias's story. The sole inheritance his grandfather left him was a dusty old shack and a worn, ordinary notebook. When Elias first held that journal, he assumed neither the pages nor the land he stood on truly belonged to him. But he was wrong. The notebook was not just a diary. It was the manifesto of a 30-year-old patient vendetta. Narrator Gardner. His grandfather, Didioclu, was a simple man. He had worked as the groundskeeper for the founder of Vance Development, Lord Vance, for 3 decades. Didioclu knew the earth better than Vance ever could. He knew what lay beneath the soil, and which seeds would sprout when. But the one thing Didioclu didn't know was how deep Vance's greed truly went. The story began 30 years ago. Didioclu used his life savings to buy a small plot of land, a place where he planned to build a life with his family, to cultivate his own small garden. But Lord Vance decided that the city's new financial hub belonged exactly there. Vance wanted Didioclu's land. First, he made an offer. Then he made a threat. Didioclu refused. That land was his life. Vance, however, was not accustomed to hearing the word no. Narrator Gardner. Events escalated quickly. One night, Didioclu's small cabin was reduced to ash by a fire. The official report cited electrical fault, but Didioclu knew it was no accident. He barely managed to save his family. But the cabin, his dreams, and the deed to the property were lost to the flames. Vance arrived the next morning. See, Didioclu? The earth sometimes rejects you. Accept it now. This is the price of that land, he said, handing Didioclu a check for a fraction of the land's true value. Didioclu clutched the only thing he had left, that notebook. He took the check, but as he looked at Lord Vance, something far more terrifying than the fire ignited in his eyes. A silent oath. On the last page of his notebook, a single sentence was written, though it first appeared to be just an expression. Of profound pain, it would eventually become a map in Elias's hands. But what was that sentence? And how could it transform to a map 30 years later? We're about to find out. Narrator Gardner. 30 years passed. Elias lived in the simple dwelling built on the site of the original cabin. He worked a mundane job at a marketing firm. Failure and scarcity seemed to be his destiny. After his grandfather Didioclu's funeral, Elias was cleaning out the cabin when he found the journal. It was an old gardener's notebook filled with notes, sketches, fertilizer formulas. Until he reached the final page. Narrator reciting Didioclu's entry. You stole even my shadow, Vance, but roots do not forget revenge. May 25, 1993. I have sown the seed. That building will not be yours. It will be my grave. Narrator Gardner. May 25, 1993. That was just a few days after the fire. It was the exact date of the grand opening for the gleaming skyscraper Vance Development built on that burned land. The Vance Tower. Elias initially dismissed it as his grandfather's anguished fantasy. But then, a faded, small piece of a map fell from the journal, looking as if it had been pressed into the soil itself. The map showed the land where the cabin stood. In the center, a red circle was drawn, marked with a single word, box. Narrator Gardner. Elias hesitated. Logically, this was the delusion of an old man. But that oath, that building will not be yours. It will be my grave. That sentence planted a seed of curiosity in Elias that he couldn't ignore. That night, armed with the map, Elias began digging in the backyard, exactly where Didioclu had last planted flowers. 2 hours of sweat, stone, and sheer exhaustion. Just as he was about to give up, his shovel hit a solid metallic object. It was a rusty metal box. He struggled to pull it free. The box was locked. But Didioclou's notes contained a cryptic clue. The lock is as strong as your love for the earth. Instead of finding a key, Elias used his grandfather's old, rusty pruning shears, the same ones used for the soil, to force the lock open. Narrator, Gardner. What was inside the box sent Elias down a path of no return. A worn title deed. Copy of the official registration showing the land and the adjacent parcel had been legally registered in Didioclou's name the day before the fire. Vance had built the tower on land that legally belonged to Didioclou. Photographs, blurry, long-distance shots of Lord Vance on the night of the fire, shaking hands with two men who were clearly the arsonists. But the most compelling piece was a letter. A handwritten note from Didioclou, penned immediately after the fire. I did not sue Vance, because he is powerful enough to buy even a court. My kind of justice will be different. I will strike the tower at its most vulnerable point. Narrator, Gardner. Didioclou hadn't sued Vance. He had continued to work as a gardener for 30 years. Every day he watched the skyscraper, waiting for his revenge to bloom. But how? Elias examined the rest of the notebook. Just gardening notes. Until one detail on a page caught his eye. The poisonous root at the core, Toxifera. What had Gardener Didioclou been doing for 30 years? Just before the construction of Vance Tower, on the burned land, right near the very foundations of the tower, he had sown the seeds of a rare perennial, highly invasive root system known as Toxifera. Under normal conditions, the plant was harmless. But when constantly watered and allowed to grow, its roots rapidly spread, disturbing the soil structure and creating invisible micro-fissures in the concrete foundation. Didioclou had set a silent biological clock. His goal was not to destroy the tower instantly. His goal was to make its foundations questionable 30 years later, when the tower was at the peak of its prestige. Rot it from within. Narrator, Gardner. Elias held all the cards, evidence of Vance's arson, the stolen deed, and most crucially, the knowledge that the tower's foundations were compromised. But who would believe him? An ordinary employee couldn't accuse the city's greatest baron of a 30-year-old arson and invisible roots. Elias needed an intermediary. He went to his father's attorney friend, Mr. Caston. Caston, upon reviewing the documents, was horrified. Elias, this evidence is solid, but Vance is this city. We must strike him before he attacks you. We only get one shot. Caston's plan: no meetings, no leaks to the press. To force Vance to surrender in the spotlight of his own power with a single devastating move. Narrator, Gardner. Meanwhile, Lord Vance was in his 70s, still formidable, still untouchable. He was hosting a magnificent gala to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Vance Tower. When Vance looked at the tower, he saw not only his power, but also that small, dirty deal he made 30 years ago. Vance remembered the fire. He remembered the check. But he had long forgotten the gardener. Because ordinary people are just extras in the stories of great men. Vance assumed Didioclou's silence was acceptance. But on that night, the day before the gala, Vance's secretary found a simple brown envelope on his desk. Inside was only one thing: a photocopy of the last page of the gardener's journal. That building will not be yours. It will be my grave. Vance's hand trembled. For the first time, after 30 years, he felt a shadow. The gardener had returned. Narrator, Gardner. Elias and Mr. Caston decided to play their final hand. Caston obtained the latest revision reports submitted by Vance Tower to the local government. The report mentioned regular foundation checks due to high root activity. This confirmed that Vance was aware of the plant's existence. Their plan: to enter the lobby on the night of the gala, not as guests. Elias donned his grandfather's old gardening jacket. In his hand, he carried a bouquet of toxifera plants. Elias entered the lobby of Vance Tower and walked until the orchestra stopped playing. Lord Vance was raising a glass in the middle of the crowd. Security guards rushed towards Elias, but he raised his voice first. Narrator, Gardner. Elias looked, not at the tower, but straight into Lord Vance's eyes. He shouted, Elias, tense, furious, Mr. Vance, 30 years ago, you broke an oath. You stole the land of a gardener. You burned my family's dreams. The room froze. Lord Vance's face turned white. Security, get this man out. He roared, Elias. Loudly, you can throw me out, but you cannot throw out the truth. The foundation of that tower is built on the lie you planted 30 years ago. A seed was added to the lie you sowed. Lord Vance, this tower won't be yours. It will be my grandfather. De Dioclou's grave, because the roots have seeped in. The roots are rotting everything. Elias threw the bouquet of toxifera onto the marble floor in front of Lord Vance. At that exact moment, Kestone's team anonymously emailed every gala attendee a link containing the Foundation plant reports and the arson photos. Narrator, Gardner. Vance's empire crumbled in a single moment because of a gardener's seed of revenge. The gala dissolved. Reporters swarmed the tower the moment they received the email. Lord Vance was investigated not only for a